In this video, we're going to install WordPress using one of the many what's called one-click installation methods. Now, while there is a few more than just one click involved, you will see just how easy this method is in just a second. Now, before we get started in the WordPress creation process, I'd suggest that we first get our ducks in a row by creating a desktop folder to keep all the files dealing with our new WordPress site in. Files like our login details, images, future content, and whatever else you can think of that will have anything to do with this site can go into this particular folder. The alternative is that 6 months or a year from now, you're going to spend several minutes or hours looking for your login credentials or those expensive header images you bought for this site or your backup files, and you're going to hear my voice whispering in the background, "I told you so." So avoid the headaches and the hassles. Just spend a few minutes now, create that desktop folder, and you'll be in good shape down the line when you really need it. This so-called one-click method requires that you have access to one of a few different applications that create programs like WordPress on your server in as little as one click of your mouse button. Now, the one I'm going to be using in this demo is called Softaculous, but all of these applications work pretty much the same way. So once you've logged into your cPanel control panel, go ahead and scroll on down until you come to the module that says Software and Services, and in here is where you're going to find one of those little icons for that particular application. And again, in this case, it's Softaculous. Go ahead and click on that icon. That'll open up the application page, and you just select WordPress. And up on the top here gives you the various tabs to learn more about the program WordPress. But we're going to go ahead and just click on install to keep the video moving along. And I'm going to install it on the HTTP protocol because I do not have an SSL certificate attached to my domain. And if I have multiple domains in this cPanel, hit the drop down arrow here to select the one you want to install WordPress on. And if you want to install WordPress on a subdirectory of that domain, then just type the name in here. Make sure that that directory does not currently exist, because this application will create it for you. But I'm going to install WordPress on the root directory, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to leave the database table prefix just the way that it is by default. And under the site settings, I'm going to leave these as they are by default as well. I'll show you here before the end of the video on where inside of the administration section of the installed WordPress program, you'll be able to change these later on. Now, this is probably the most important section of the entire installation process, and that's where you assign yourself an admin username, admin password, and an admin email address. The email address is populated by default with admin and your domain name. I would suggest you create an email address, if this isn't one that's already in existence, that you either create one that is like this or replace this with one that is active that you have access to on a regular basis. But the main thing you want to take away from this is do not use admin as your username. Make it pretty difficult to guess. And the password, you've got the key off to the right here that will create a password for you that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 out of 100, which is doable. But if you want to get closer to 100 out of 100, just add additional characters. They can be upper or lowercase letters. They can be numbers or even special characters. And be sure to copy this information and paste it onto a document somewhere in your organizational files, because you will need this at some point in the near future. And let's come on down and select the language. I'm going to leave mine at English. And under Select Plugins, I'm going to go ahead and check that box to install Limit Login Attempts. This is a great plugin. Unfortunately, it has not been updated for a couple of years, but it's still a great plugin. It works. It does what it's supposed to do, and that is, just as the name implies, it limits login attempts. If somebody's going to sit there and try to continue to guess your username and your password, then they're going to be locked out. Now, there are other plugins that will do this as well, so you're not limited to just this particular plugin for that action. I'm going to go ahead and install it anyway. You can always go back and uninstall it later on and replace it with a different plugin. Under Advanced Options, you can learn more about each one of these items by just hovering over the I at the end. But I'm going to leave all of these alone. Even the backup, I'm going to leave that as Don't Back Up, because I'll be using a third-party plugin to do the backups for me. If you're not going to be using a third-party plugin, you should definitely have a backup going on. And to use this one, you just select whichever one you want, whether it's once a day or once a week, depending upon the amount of content you're regularly adding, would depend on which option you go with here, and then choose the amount of backups you want to store on your server. You should never go with unlimited, but 4 is a pretty good number to go with. But again, I'm going to go with don't backup. And you can choose a theme if you want to go ahead and install one from this application, but for the time being, I'm going to leave this alone. And here's the one-click part of this entire installation process. After you've got things set up the way you like, click on that button once and it's installing WordPress for you. And we're good. Click on this link here to actually see the site. That's the current theme that it's on, and I believe that's the default 2015 theme. And if you want to log into the backend area, click on this link and have your username and password handy. And you'll only get this warning popping up if you elected to install that plugin Limit Login Attempts. So at this point, we want to go ahead and put in our username and password, and then click on Login. This is the dashboard area, and if you come over here to Settings, General, this is where you can change the site title and tagline, and under Appearance, Themes, it's where you would go in and add additional themes and change the current theme to whatever you would want. And that's it. That's going to bring us to the end of this video on using one of the one-click installation applications to install WordPress on your server. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. In this video, we're going to install WordPress manually, which does take a little bit longer than the so-called instant methods, but there are more security measures built into this method, and this way you're always going to be installing the most recent version of WordPress. But first, to keep things organized, go ahead and create a folder on your desktop relating to this WordPress site. Name it whatever you want. Inside this folder, you should keep things like your images, your text or spreadsheet documents that contain the login credentials, your backups, anything related to this particular WordPress site. You should have one place on your computer to go to find all those goodies. Okay, that's out of the way. Now, there's basically 4 things we're going to do to create our WordPress site. We're going to go to wordpress.org and download the most recent installation files. Then number 2, we're going to unzip those files and upload them to our server. Now at this point, I need to assume that you've already got a domain name and a web hosting service. And you should also determine at this point, are you going to be uploading or installing WordPress on your root directory or on a subdirectory? Meaning, whenever you type in the URL to your WordPress site, is it going to be mydomain.com? Boom, there's your WordPress site. Or is it going to be in a subdirectory where you type in mydomain.com/blog? Either way you want to do it is totally fine because the installation process is exactly the same. It's just where are you going to upload these files to? Number 3, we're going to build a database. And number 4, we're going to add our database to our WordPress site. And that's basically it. So let's go and get to work. Now I've already taken the liberty of going to wordpress.org and downloading the most recent installation files. And I want to point out that in a zipped up format, it's just a little bit over 6 megabytes. But whenever we uncompress those, as you can see as I hover over this, it's almost 17 megabytes. And most every installation process recommends that you upload these files here. So I open that up. And this will take twice as long than if you were to upload a single zip file. But if you're going to do that fast way, as I'm about to show you, you have to send the right zip file. So you cannot send the zip file that you downloaded from wordpress.org. That's not going to work. So first, unzip them. And I do that in my Windows machine by right-clicking and then left-clicking on Extract All. Navigate to the location on my computer where I want those files to be extracted to. Click on Extract and we're good. And then you come up with something like this. Then open that folder and expose all the files. Then select the top file or folder in this case. Hold the Shift key down on your keyboard, select the bottom file, and that selects all the files. And then just pick one of these files in here, it does not matter, and then right-click and then compress, or in my case, send to compressed folder. It'll zip all these guys up into the one file right here, and that's what I'm going to upload to my server. But first I want to point out that if you click on this README file, it opens up in your browser, and this gives you some more installation tips, updating tips, and so on. So when you get a chance, check that out. Now we head over to our file manager in our cPanel control panel and upload that zip file. Click on Upload, click on Choose File, navigate to the location of that zip file we just created, select that, click on Open, and it's going to begin the upload process. And while it's doing that, I'm going to come on back over here to cPanel and create our database. So scroll on down till you get to the Databases panel, click on MySQL Databases, and if I'm going too fast for you, well, that's what the pause button's for. Now we want to create our database here, create a user here, and then tie the two together down here. And I'll get to that here in just a second. But first, let's create our database. Now you can put whatever you want in here, and if you make a mistake, don't worry, because they will tell you in big red letters. Click on Create Database. Copy this, but whenever you do this, make sure you do not copy that period at the end, because that's not part of the name. I'm going to go ahead and paste this on a document that I got stashed away here. That's going to hold the database name, the database username, the database password, and a new database prefix. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go ahead and paste this right here. It'll all make sense here in a second. Oh, and by the way, this stuff here, these are the username and the password for my WordPress administrator area. Again, I'll get to that here in just a second. So click on Go Back. Come on down and create our user. And I'm going to use the same name for my username as I did for the database name. So I just want to copy this guy right here. Now you don't have to. You can name your username whatever you want. But this is just a habit I've gotten into. Now we want to create a strong password. And I do that by using the password generator. Copy this. Check that box saying that you did copy that. Click on Use Password. Click on Create User. And I'm going to paste that password right here. And remember, my database name and username are exactly the same. So we're good there. Click on Go Back. Now we need to tie the two together. If you've got multiple databases and multiple users, make sure that you select the proper ones from this drop-down arrow. Click on Add. Click on All Privileges. Click on Make Changes. Click on Go Back, and our database is all complete. Now we come on back up here and make sure our upload is finished. It is. Click on Back to Home. Select that file that we just uploaded. Come on up here and click on Extract. Click on Extract Files. Click on Close. Select that zip file again. Because we no longer need it, let's go ahead and delete it. Click on Delete Files. We are good to go. Now we've got all the pieces of the puzzle put together. We just need to tie them all up. And we're going to do that by putting our install URL in a new tab here. So let's paste that right in here. And that install URL is wherever you have your WordPress site installed. And in my example, I'm installing it on the root directory. If you had it in a subdirectory, then it would be your domain name / the name of your subdirectory, like blog or members or whatever, / wp-admin / install.php. Then hit enter. Then you select the language you want your WordPress site to be in. Then click on continue. Tells you some information you're going to need here to tie your database into your WordPress installation. This is the stuff we just gathered a second ago when we created our database. So have that ready. Then click on Let's Go. Enter that information in here, and more times than not, the database host will be localhost. If you're not sure, contact your hosting service, or you can just leave it alone and give it a try. And if it gives you an error message, then you'll know to contact your hosting service. And as far as the table prefix for your database, like it says here, if you're going to be running multiple WordPress installations on the single database, you want to change this. And this can be a security issue as well, since most hackers know that the table prefix is WP_ by default. It might give them a leg up on being able to break into your site. So another reason to change that up. But for the sake of this video, it being a demo and all, I'm just going to leave this alone. And then once you get the information filled in here that you had copied under your text document earlier when you created your database, click on Submit. Then you'll get this pop up telling you to run the install. Then this comes up telling you to put in your site title, which you can do later, but at the very least, you're going to need to create a username that's not easily guessed. And usually the password that's here by default is good and strong, as it says, or you can change this. In either case, you want to copy the username and the password because you're going to need that here in just a second to log in. The email address, you want to make sure this is an active email address that you have access to. And on privacy, I always uncheck this, just personal preference, That way, the search engines will usually not index my site until I'm ready for them to. In other words, after I've got content in there, got all the things set up the way that I want it to be set up. Then once you get all the blanks filled in and your username and your password copied, click on Install WordPress, and you get the success message. Yay! Now then click on Login and enter the username and the password that you just copied to your text document. Then click on Login. And this is our dashboard area for the admin area. Now then we come on down here to Settings. Now basically we're done at this point, but if we come on down here to Settings and go to Reading, right here is that box that you want to untick whenever you're ready to have the search engines come and index your site. Because whenever I unticked that box on the install process, it automatically checked this box. Because this says discourage search engines, so if you want to discourage them, make sure that box is checked. But whenever you want to encourage the search engines, come on back in here and uncheck that box, click on Save Changes, and you're ready to rock and roll. And that is how you can manually create a WordPress site. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video will cover the basic after installation cleanup. Now, most all of the actions in this video are optional. I do, however, feel that they are important enough to at least let you know of them so you can then decide if you want to spend the extra few minutes to do them or not. The first thing that I do is to log into my cPanel control panel and then go over to the File Manager and access the root directory of my WordPress installation. So if you had installed WordPress on, say, a subdirectory like blog or members, then you would want to navigate to where you see these files here. But in my demonstration, it's in the root directory. So first thing is, depending upon the installation method you used, if you still have the wp-config-sample.php file, go ahead and select that. And there's a couple other ones in here too. Hold the control key down on your keyboard if you're on a PC and select the readme.html and the license.txt. These are just files you don't need. And then click on delete, confirm that, and then under wp-admin, open that up by double clicking. And there's a couple of installation files in here you don't need because, well, it's already installed. And that's install-helper.php and install.php. So select one of those, hold the control key down and select the other one, and then delete. Confirm deletion. And that's all from the file manager that we're going to mess with. So we can go ahead and close this out. And now let's go ahead and log into the dashboard area of our WordPress site. And if you've not done that before, then enter the URL to your WordPress site /wp-admin, hit enter, and you'll be presented with a box for you to add your username and your password, and then just log in. That'll bring you to this page, which is the dashboard page, and we'll just kind of start at the top. Now, the first item I'm going to suggest getting rid of is the sample post and the sample comment that's attached to that post. But if you want to keep this placeholder to kind of give you a visual guide as to how they look, for example, this is that first post right here, and if you want to keep that, then by all means do so. I'm going to go ahead and trash it, and it's still available in the trash heap. In case you want to bring that back, you can do so. But by trashing that, we also trash the comment that was assigned to that. Next up is pages. We've got a sample page for our placeholder, and like with post, if you want to keep this to kind of get a visual as to how it's going to look, then go ahead and hang on to it. But I'm going to go ahead and trash that. And like with post, it's still in the trash bin, so if you want to bring that back out live later, then go ahead and do so. Unless, of course, you empty the trash bin, then it's going to be gone for good. Now, a couple of other items that you might want to consider deleting, and that would be under the appearance themes and under plugins, because by default, there's a few different themes that are installed on your WordPress site. Depending upon the version that you've installed, it could be 2014, 2015, 2016, or even 2013 down here. You really only need one theme installed at a time. I know people that have 10 or 11 different themes installed, but you're only using one at a time. So in most cases, there's no reason to keep multiple themes installed. It takes a matter of a minute or two to install a brand new theme. So why have the extra baggage if you don't need it, right? But that's just my thinking. So if you want to delete these additional themes, just select it. Come on down here in the lower right and click on delete. Select it, come on down to the lower right, click on delete, confirm deletion, and select it, come on down to the right and click on delete, and then confirm that by clicking on OK, and now we've got just the one theme. Likewise with plugins, if we go to plugins, click on that, And these are the two plugins that come installed by default. I usually just go ahead and delete the Hello Dolly plugin, and you can do that by just clicking on the delete link here. I usually keep and activate the Akismet plugin unless I have a different plugin that will do pretty much the same thing. Then I'll delete both of these. So you can either delete them individually by using the links, or you can select multiple plugins and use the bulk action option up here. But I'm just going to go ahead and select the Hello Dolly, delete that, and then confirm the deletion, and that's it. Now, while there might be more you can do to clean things up, this is what I do with every new install, and if I wasn't talking at the same time, I could have done this in less than a minute. So it's worth it to me. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on after installation cleanup of my WordPress site. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video is going to cover some basic security measures that you can put in place for your WordPress site. Now, the 4 items we're going to be covering in this video is number 1, we're going to replace the default ID number 1 with the newly created admin user account, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Number 2, we're going to keep everything up to date, and I'll cover that in more detail here just as soon as we get done creating that new admin user account. And number 3, if using older versions of WordPress for some odd reason, then I'm going to show you how you can hide the version number of that older version of WordPress you're using from potential hackers. And number 4, doing regular backups of both your files and your database is a good thing, and I'll show you how you can tackle that pretty easily. So first off, replacing the default ID number 1. What the heck am I talking about? Well, whenever you first install WordPress, it asks you to create a admin user account and a password. Well, that admin user account is assigned to the very first slot in the database, and that's ID number 1. Logging into my cPanel control panel, let me show you what I'm talking about. Scroll on down to databases and click on PHP My Admin. And this is going to show you all the different databases that you have assigned to that one domain. And this is the one for the demo site that we're working on. And you can see right here at WP Users, we go ahead and open this up. It's going to give a list of all the users on that database. And right now there's just the one, but the ID number 1 is right here, and it's assigned to the administrator, and that is a potential security issue. So we're going to get around that by simply creating another account inside of our WordPress dashboard by coming over to Users, Add New, enter a new username, email address, first name, last name, website if you want, password, and then under Role, hit the drop-down Administrator. And that will assign this particular user to the next available slot. And of course, in this case, there's only one, so the next available slot will be ID number 2. Then we'll come back in and delete ID number 1. And we'll do that by logging out as our ID number 1 administrator user, logging in as the new administrator, and then deleting the old original administrator account that was assigned to ID number 1. Pretty simple stuff, and it's so simple that this is a potential security hole that's easily plugged. So by all means, take a few minutes and take care of that. Now, number 2, keeping everything up to date. Now, what I'm referring to here is keeping your plugins up to date. When a new version of a particular plugin that you have installed comes out, update it. Likewise with themes and with the core WordPress files. Now, the one thing about the themes and the plugins, those need to be updated immediately as soon as the new versions come out. As far as the core WordPress files, I'm in the camp that you should wait at least 7 days before updating to a new version. But if it's listed as a security update, then go ahead and update that immediately. Otherwise, on new versions of WordPress, sometimes there's some lingering compatibility issues between the new version of WordPress and some plugins or themes. So let somebody else find out about those on their site, and that can take about 3 to 5 days. So again, new versions, wait a few days. Security updates, update immediately. Other than that though, update your plugins and your themes immediately. And number 3, if using an older version of WordPress, you want to hide the version number from the potential hackers, because older versions of WordPress are known to have security issues. And that's why hackers love people that don't update their WordPress sites. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm in the Chrome browser, so if you're in a different browser, this might look a little different to you. But just right-click and go to View Page Source. And you can see here the version 4.3.1. What we want to do now is we want to be able to hide the version. Because if this says 3.2, then the hackers doing just what I just did, will be able to gain access based on whatever security hole there was in that older version. So we want to be able to hide these version numbers, and there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can fiddle with the code that would require us to create a child theme and other time-consuming actions, or we can simply install and activate a plugin in a matter of seconds. Here, let me show you. Let's go and get rid of this. Come on back into our dashboard area. Come on over to Plugins. Go to Add New. And up here in the Search Plugins box, type in Meta Generator and Version Info Remover. That's a mouthful. Then hit Enter, and it should be one of the first ones that pops up. Right here, Meta Generator and Version Info Remover. Go ahead and click on Install Now. Activate. And it does have an additional item that pops into the settings here. But if we click on that to go look at it, you can see by default everything that we need is already done. But if for some reason there's something that you want to exclude from this, then you can enter those URLs right here. Let's come on back here to our home page and refresh. Right click, View Page Source, and you can see those version numbers have been eliminated. And lastly, number 4, doing regular backups of both files and database. Now, what do I mean by regular? Well, that depends on your own situation. If you are regularly adding new content daily, then you might want to consider doing a daily backup. If you're only adding new content once a week or once a month, then do your backups accordingly. This can be done a couple of ways. An easy way is by automating this with the plugin. Come on over here to our dashboard area again. Come on back to Plugins and go to Add New. And there's quite a few plugins and third-party tools that can do backups for you. But again, we're talking about both database and files. Do a search for Updraft. Full name is Updraft Plus, but yeah, that's right here. Updraft Plus Backup and Restoration. And as you can see by this brief description here, it's a complete backup. And you can do it manually or schedule it. The backups can be sent to Dropbox, Amazon S3, Google Drive, FTP, and it's fairly popular too. Go ahead and click on Install Now, activate, and then come on down to Settings, and then click on Updraft Plus Backups. And between the updraftplus.com site and their FAQs, you've got plenty of information here on how to set this up and to put this to use for both manual and automating the backup process. Now, there are many more security measures that you can put into place to help keep the bad people out, but for now, the items covered in this video will help keep your site safer than the sites that do not have these basics in place. That's going to bring us to the end of this video on basic WordPress security. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day.